Today, 6th graders, we're going to look at subtracting integers. By the end of this lesson, you want to be able to subtract integers accurately and represent their computation. First, let's just take a look at how we can represent different integers. So for example, a gain of 5 yards is the same thing as either writing a plus 5 or just 5. This should be a loss of 5 yards would be equivalent to writing a negative 5. Depositing means you're putting money in, so that would be a plus 20 or just 20. And withdrawing 20 means you're taking it out, so it would be negative 20. So how does that relate to adding and subtracting integers? So if we look here, if we just do 3 minus 2, you know that to be 1. 3 minus 5, we can use a little bit of logic. If it's 3 degrees out and the temperature goes down 5 degrees, the temperature would be negative 2. Well, if we go back to when we were adding 3 plus negative 2, remember they have different signs, we find their difference. Their difference is 1. 3 is the bigger number, so it would be positive 1. Here we'd find the difference of 3 and 5, which would be 2. 5 is the bigger number, so it would be negative 2. What do we notice about these? And what do we notice about these? Let's continue to think about that when we look at just some representations. So if I have 8, this is really a positive 8 and a positive 2. So if I have 8 positives, and I come away and I take away 2 of them, I am now left with positive 6. Here I have positive 3 and I'm taking away 1 positive. So positive 3, I come and take one of them away, I'm left with 2 positives. What about negatives? So I start out with negative 5. I'm going to take away 2 of those negatives. Now I'm left with 3 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to take away one of those. I'm now left with 5 negatives. What are you starting to notice? Okay, let's move on to subtracting integers with different signs. So what happens if I have 5 positives and I want to take away 3 negatives? Well, the problem is I don't have any negatives to take away. So going back to what we learned about zero pairs, remember I can add 0 to a number and it doesn't change its value. So I'm going to add 1 0 pair, 2 0 pairs, and 3 0 pairs. So right now I have a bunch of 0 pairs. So I haven't changed my original number yet. It's still 5. But now I have those negative 3's that I can take away. Once I do that, I'm going to count what's left. So I have my original 5 positives, but now I have those 3 extra. So my answer actually becomes positive 8. Same thing goes with the next one. If I have 2 negatives and I want to take away 3 positives, I'm going to add my 0 pairs. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go ahead and take away those 3 positives, and now I have negative 5. This one's a little bit easier to reason with. If you think about it, if it's negative 2 degrees out and the temperature falls 3 degrees, the temperature is now negative 5. So you can go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out the next 2 on your own. Here we have positive 3. I'm going to take away 2 negatives. So I'm going to add in my 0 pairs, take those out. I now have positive 5 as my answer. Here, if I have negative 3 and the temperature goes down 4 degrees, if you don't want to write out the symbols, the temperature would now be negative 7. So I know you're probably a little confused, but what we can look at is there's actually a trick and a pattern that we start to see with integers. And that is, if we start subtracting any integers, we can do something called a double slash, or in other words, it's where you're going to add its opposite instead of subtracting. What that looks like, instead of 3 minus 2, the first slash always makes our minus sign into a plus, and we're going to change the sign. So since this is a positive 2, it becomes a negative 2. So now we have 3 plus negative 2. Find their difference is 1. 3 is bigger, so it would be positive 1. Negative 2 minus negative 4, first slash. Second slash makes the negative into a positive. Now we have negative 2 plus positive 4. Different signs, find their difference. 2, 4 is bigger, so it would be positive 2. Now you're not always going to have to double slash. Sometimes you're just going to be able to reason things out, and that's okay too, but just being aware that that's another way you can do it. So like here, 4 minus 8, if it's 4 degrees, the temperature falls 8 degrees. The temperature outside is now negative 4. Or here, negative 3, and you're taking away 2 negatives, they leave you with just 1 negative. So let's look at a real life example. I went golfing with my husband. At the 9th hole, he was 3 under par, and I was 4 over par. What is the difference between our scores? So if I'm 4 over, that's the same as having a positive 4. Finding the difference means subtract, and he's 3 under par, so negative 3. So I have positive 4 minus negative 3. I'm going to go ahead and double slash. I'm going to make this a plus, this a positive. So now I have 4 plus positive 3, or 7. So there's a difference of 7 between our scores. On a number line, if we would do that, just to represent this, so my score is positive 4, his score is negative 3, and we would just count the difference. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They are 7 apart, and that's also the difference between our scores. Super confusing, I know, probably. Just go ahead and leave a question on Edmodo, and if you could also include 7 on your Edmodo comment for me, I would really appreciate that.